I'm just sharing it to you.
We'll go ahead and get started.
What's he doing? Yeah, that's it.
You gotta do it again.
He's the man.
I'd like to welcome everybody to this afternoon's agenda meeting. This afternoon we'll be reviewing the action items that will be formally addressed next Tuesday evening, February 20th already, at 6 p.m. And in our audience today is the class number 36 of Leadership Hot Springs. So thank you for staying and watching the agenda meeting, and give yourselves a round of applause for being involved. Earlier this afternoon, the leadership number 36 met with Bill and Brian and a number of department managers and deputy city managers, and reviewed city operations, and then the city board met with them for approximately 45 minutes to an hour immediately after that. So as part of their education of orientation to the greater Hot Springs community and Garland County as well, they're here to they're continuing on to view the agenda meeting, and if you'd like to see the real deal, then come next Tuesday at 6 p.m. So Bill, will you start us off with a review of those action items?
Yes, Mayor, members of the board. You will have Karen Scott making her quarterly financial report at that meeting. That's something that our finance director, Ms. Scott, does every quarter. So rolling up, she'll be under the city manager report, and we'll report that at that time. Your first item of business is consider Resolution R2421, a resolution acknowledging receipt of the City of Hot Springs financial statements for December 2023, and our Finance Director, Karen Scott, will present. Karen?
Good afternoon. Monthly financial statements are issued to keep city management and constituents apprised of the financial condition of the City of Hot Springs. The December 2023 financial statements will be provided to you as an attachment in your packet, and staff recommends acknowledging receipt of the December 2023 financial statements.
Any questions of Ms. Scott? Thank you.
Next item is consider Resolution R2422, a resolution revising the 2023 and 2024 budgets by appropriating funds for certain prior year expenditures and for other purposes. And again, Ms. Scott.
In Arkansas, municipal budgets expire at midnight on December 31st each year. Purchase orders that were issued against that budget expire also. Thus, items that were ordered in 2023 but were not received until 2024 must be charged against the 2024 budget. At the beginning of each year, we must make appropriations in the current budget for capital items and one-time projects that were not received or completed before December 31st of the prior year. In addition, certain budget adjustments are needed in 2024 and are due to known changes, as well as a budget amendment that is needed in the 2023 budget. In your packet, you will have three attachments. Attachment A will be the 2023 remaining appropriation only that needs to be reappropriated in 2024. Attachment B will list all of the open POs that will need to be carried over into 2024. And attachment C will be the small budget amendment that is necessary in the 2023 budget. This will increase expenses in each of the affected funds, thereby reducing the 2023 year-end fund balance or net assets. As I said, the attachments will contain all of the adjustments, and staff recommends that we reappropriate 2023 appropriations that were not purchased or received by December 31st, 2023, and make other necessary budget adjustments to the 2023 and 2024 budgets.
Very good. Any questions of Ms. Scott on this item?
Mayor, I will say that this is something that we bring to you about this time every year as we look at those reappropriations. The only amendment is in the jail expense fund, and that would, as Ms. Scott stated, take a budget amendment.
Very good. Thank you.
Next is consider Resolution R2423, a resolution awarding a bid to Golden Standard Construction, LLC for construction of new dugouts at Kimry Park. And our sports recreation manager, Adam Ursery, is here to discuss. Adam.
Thank you. Kimry Park is the venue for many different youth and adults city sports leagues, events, and tournaments. The current dugouts at the softball, baseball fields are in need of replacement. With the board approval, we would have Golden Standard Construction construct 8 new softball and baseball dugouts. This change would make for safer play and allow for better viewing from the current spectator area. After reviewing the bids received for this project, it is found that Golden Standard Construction's bid was the lowest responsive bid. Therefore, staff recommends awarding the contract in the amount of $173,577.60 to Golden Standard Construction for the construction of 8 new softball and baseball dugouts. This was included in our 2024 sport recreation capital budget, and Golden Standard, they were previously awarded the contract for the renovation of the Kimry Park concession stand.
Any questions? Yes, Director Garcia?
They were a first-time contractor, I believe, in that award last year, and you evidently have been satisfied with their work to date. And one part of that contract was to be completed by the end of February. I don't know if the weather put them behind, but how is that looking for completion?
Completion's looking good we did have some weather delays with the ice and some rainy days as well that we had to add in there. And then whenever the contract originally started, we were still running leagues out there, so we extended it to that to make sure that we're ready to go for our spring leagues. But it's going good. The contract's going good.
Do you expect it to be
Yes, ma'am.
finished by when?
It should be the second week of March.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Glad to hear it.
You mentioned you said you were going to construct it to not obscure the viewing or better viewing. Are you
Correct.
moving the dugouts down the lines
Yes,
further?
we're moving them down the line because currently the spectator area is right here, dugouts are here, and home plate is here, so you don't really get a clear view from the spectator area.
Okay, very good. Any further questions? Director Webb?
Thank you, Mayor. So over there at Kimry where the softball fields are, I've noticed that there are some, it looks like the old dugouts are already torn down, and there are some like concrete, foundations put up. Is this where this potential new dugouts would go, is on those concrete foundations that are there? Or is that for a different?
So there's separate concrete foundations. The ones that you're referring to, I believe, were where the dugouts were removed.
Okay.
Those are spectator areas that were included in the previous bid.
Right.
That'll be bleachers, so you have home and away visitors and home spectator areas. The additional concrete pads that you see further down the baselines, those would be where these new dugouts would be constructed.
And I can't remember right off the top of my head, but with that last package, and you're referring to, I think it was the $352,000 bid that went out for the concession stand renovations and dugout repair,
Yes,
right?
yeah, 452.
And the fence too. Were any new bleachers a part of that package?
No, they're not a part of that package.
Okay.
So we'll be repurposing. There's some bleachers on Field 4 that we'll be repurposing for the Field 4 shade structure, and then we'll be buying additional shade structures for the Field 1 and Field 2.
Okay. If we do run across any, would it be possible to slide bleachers over to the soccer field?
If we run across,
Any additional bleachers as we're going through these renovations at the softball complex?
I don't see why not.
Okay. Just maybe we can have a look and see if we have any, because I know those over at the soccer complex are beyond in need of repair.
Yes,
It'd
sir.
help. Thank you.
Well, in part of the reappropriations, we're moving some money over from 2023 to 24. That'll give us some additional funds to spend at Kimry. And as we get through these projects, some of those remaining funds, we'll be able to do some things. We need to do a few more repairs at the tennis courts. We can certainly get some bleachers over at the soccer fields. So we won't really know what that number is till we get to the end of the process. But I do think there's going to be some additional funds left over that we can use for some of that.
Thank you.
Very good. Any further questions? Thank you.
Next, we have consider Resolution R 2424, a resolution approving a work order to the master agreement for professional services between the City of Hot Springs and Garver LLC to rehabilitate runway 523 at the Hot Springs Memorial Field Airport. This is in the amount of $75,800, and our airport director, Don Rollett, will present. Don?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This work order is for the planning, design, and bidding process for a runway rehabilitation project that will take place in the summer this year. The project is a crack repair and seal project, as well as restriping the runway. That'll give us some more time on the runway before we do a more extensive rehabilitation, which is scheduled for 2027. So this particular work order is for the planning, design, and bidding to start that project.
It is a 95.5 grant. We have no grant match from the city.
Right.
Any questions of Don? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have consider resolution R 2425, a resolution authorizing certain HVAC goods and services from Comfort Systems USA, ARC Inc. for 109 Hobson Avenue pursuant to the term contract approved in resolution number 9852, approving a budget adjustment and for other purposes, and our Public Works Director, Ron Seavright, will present. Ron?
Good afternoon. So as part of our maintenance and service agreement with Comfort Systems, they performed inspections and maintenance on RTU units over at the Community Resource Center. Upon looking at these, they found that 3 RTUs were bad. The age on these RTUs are 1995. We can no longer get parts for them, so these will have to be replaced. On 2 other units, they found that the heat exchangers were bad. Those are new enough to where we can just replace the heat exchangers, and we'll get those replaced as soon as possible. The cost of this with totally to replace all those 3 units and repair the other 2 is $84,273.39, and funding will come from 2021 CBDG funds.
Any questions of Ron? Director Garcia?
Thank you, Mayor. On the 3 that have to be replaced, what is their age?
1995.
All of 3 of them were
Yes, ma'am.
installed? Okay. And then the ones that just are newer, they were purchased more recent and just,
Correct. And the rest of the units that are along there that they inspected are in good condition. So it was
Good.
just those 3.
thank you.
If the board recalls, we did repurpose some of the 2021 CDBG grant funds for this particular purpose. We knew that as we went into the building, that some of those were old and may need to be replaced. Also for the fire suppression, those things that'll be
Right.
coming to you later. But we are utilizing those program grant funds from CDBG.
Good.
Director Webb, did you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Going back to those units that have to be replaced, which part of that building would they fall in? Do
It's
you
the
recall?
Fellowship Hall. If you look on the alley side of the Fellowship Hall, there's 3 units over there. Those are the 3 that have to be
Okay.
replaced.
And then the 2 that are in still good condition are going to be on the other side of the
Correct. They're in the
church?
mechanical room on the other side, and they're in a door on the other side in the middle where that courtyard is.
Okay. And for clarity purposes, help me understand this acronym, RTU.
That's just the full unit. It's the unit that generates the heat and the air.
Okay, does it
It's kind
have,
of like your rooftop unit on your house.
Okay.
Or on the side.
any meaning to the R and the T and the U? Do you know? Rooftop unit? Is
Yes. That's about it.
that- Okay, thank you.
I don't know.
Yeah, you said it. It is rooftop unit. That's all it stands for.
Okay.
All right.
What about BTUs?
Now you're getting specialized here.
All right.
Brian's top unit.
We have any more questions? All right. Well, thank you very much.
Next item, Mayor, is consider resolution R 2426, a resolution authorizing the filing and acceptance of a $750,000 National Park Service Paul Bruin Historic Revitalization Grant application to benefit the Central Avenue and Pleasant Street Historic District. And our Planning and Development Director, Kathy Selman, will present the item. Ms. Selman, that's a
Thank you.
mouthful.
With that incredibly long title, there isn't really much else to tell you. This is a $750,000 grant. It requires no match on the part of the city. If received, the grant funds would support the city awarding subgrants via a competitive local grant program. And that would be similar to the procedures that we use for CDBG. And the target areas are Central Avenue and Pleasant Street historic districts.
Any questions of Kathy on this matter? Director Webb, this time, we'll go with you first. Yeah, she'll be right behind you.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to point out that now, just in this meeting alone, that looks like we're going to top over $800,000 worth of grants that are at no match to the city. Who do we owe this kudos to? Didn't we just hire a new grant writer? Or
We
would
have
it be
not hired. We do
department?
have it out for post.
Okay.
That position hasn't been filled, but, you know, Kathy Selman and her staff,
Airport.
Don Rollett and his staff, and, you know, really Gary Carnahan. We've got a whole complete streets team that are looking at different grants and really doing some fine work. We have received probably more grants in the last couple of years than I recall ever receiving. So it's really staff getting out there, finding the grants and doing that. We'll do a better job of managing those and potentially receiving more as we hire a grant writer. But it's a lot of free money to the city. I say it's free. It's money that's coming in from the federal government that we can use, or state government in some cases. But you know, without that help, a lot of cities, even Hot Springs, you know, we wouldn't be able to do the things that we're able to do without.
Well, kudos to you, Miss Kathy, Mr. Don. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Director Garcia.
Thank you, Mayor, and I was going to ask along the similar line, in that I believe a couple of years ago, we approved one of your positions in your department, and you brought on a lady that had some extensive experience in grants, and particularly in the historic grants and historic buildings and saving those. And we are seeing that is more than paying for that position, if that's helping cultivate awareness of what is available. And now is the time to apply. So I too appreciate the efforts of all of our departments and teams working together that make this happen.
Thank you. And I would like to recognize Lauren Adkins, who was our senior planner. It took us forever to find the right person for that position. And we were so lucky to find someone who not only had the background and experience we were seeking, but actually grew up here in Hot Springs. So we are extremely fortunate to have Miss Adkins here. And she has located just buckets of money in grants. So thank you to the board for approving that position.
Yes, and I was glad she resides in District 5.
Absolutely.
Any further questions of Ms. Selman? Thank you.
Next item is consider resolution R 2427, a resolution approving a substantial amendment to the Community Development Block Grant CDBG fiscal year 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022 annual action plans to repurpose $122,076.85 in total funds and for other purposes. And again, Ms. Selman.
Thank you. The Community Development Block Grant is a grant that we get each year. The city has been designated as a Community Development Block Grant Entitlement Community since 2003. And as a condition of that entitlement, every year the city submits an annual action plan to the Department of Housing and Urban Development detailing exactly what projects will be undertaken and how the funds will be spent. However, there are from time to time changes in priorities, expenditures, activities, purposes, locations, you name it. And sometimes the needs, excuse me, of a subgrantee change, and they are no longer able to use those funds as originally requested. So this is a requirement to do what is called a substantial amendment to these 4 annual action plans to repurpose money that was not spent as originally expected. So this is a third amendment to the 2019 plan, third amendment to the 2020 plan, and this is the first amendment to 21 and 22 annual action plans. The funds total $122,000, and that amount was presented to the Community Development Advisory Committee, and that citizen volunteer group who you appoint heard requests from a number of different community and neighborhood projects at their meeting last month, and they are recommending to you that $91,663 be directed toward the Malvern Avenue Gateway project, and that the remaining $30,413.85 be focused on off-cycle infrastructure funding of water and sewer utility extensions to benefit workforce housing construction. Now, what that means is that if we have someone who is building a home or building a house that would be classified as affordable to someone in our Hot Springs workforce, then rather than wait for the annual application cycle for CDBG, they would be able to come forward with the specifications of their project. If they need to extend a water line, or if they need to extend a sewer line, the Community Development Advisory Committee, using standards that would be specifically developed for that purpose, would be able to determine whether that funding should be recommended, and I believe it would then come to the board for final action. So that is the recommendation for use of these funds. And again, thank you for your careful consideration of these projects that we bring to you every year.
Any questions of Ms. Selman on this topic? Director Garcia?
Were there other projects submitted for these funds?
There were.
Will that be in our packet too?
I believe those are in your packet, yes.
How many other projects were there? Was there anything for the?
I believe there were probably a half dozen projects altogether. So about 4 that are not being recommended for funding at this time. One of the proposals came from the Housing Authority, and after hearing the request for the infrastructure off-cycle fund that is being recommended to you, the Housing Authority's representatives came forward and said, please put our wishes behind that one. We think this is so important.
Yes. Thank you.
Director Trustee?
Thank you, Mayor. Kathy, what's the time frame on these funds now that we're going to repurpose them? How quickly do they have to be spent?
They go into a pot that will be evaluated on May 2nd of each year.
Each year. All right.
And at that time, we need to have spent funds sufficient that we will not have available to us more than 1.5 times the amount of our annual award.
Okay.
So we have projects, and one of the things that CDAC was looking at was how quickly can we get this money out doing some good. And these are projects that we believe can be quickly put into play and get that money spent.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I would add on that item, that fire suppression I mentioned earlier, working real hard to get that in front of the board in the next 2 or 3 meetings. If we can get that sewed up, and that's going to take care of a huge portion of that we need to spend down.
Okay.
Next item is consider resolution R2428, resolution approving the procurement of cellular and data services from T-Mobile for the Hot Springs Fire Department pursuant to the National Association of State Procurement Officials, NASPO, cooperative contract. Fire Chief Ed Davis is here to present the item. Chief?
Good afternoon, directors. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you today. I come before you with a request. And Hot Springs Fire Department began a series of upload and download tests concerning data and cellular services that were available to us. These were responded by a lack of consistent service provided by our current cellular and data provider. During these tests, the services of Verizon, AT&T FirstNet, and T-Mobile were evaluated. In 14 out of the 20 locations along major thoroughfares that were tested, T-Mobile outperformed AT&T FirstNet and outperformed Verizon at every location tested. We've done some research with it. In fact, I have my tech guy, Dylan Taylor, here with us today. He verified the numbers associated with this, and those are all including the packets that are here with you. But he was there, witnessed the tests, and it was just consistent that T-Mobile consistently outperformed all of the other different purveyors of cellular and mobile data services. So one thing that T-Mobile is also offering us is ruthless preemption. And what ruthless preemption is that when a fire department cell phone or a fire department device, data device, a laptop or a tablet, comes online, if there are no other nodes that are available, they will actually move someone from the non-public safety category off the network and allow that fire department device to come online. That's crucial to us in large-scale incidents. Back in December, we had a fire at the Arlington in the basement. We were trying to get out on cellular service. We could not get out. They were all locked down. This will cause that kind of a situation not to exist anymore, because it will always give us priority over other non-public safety users. Another good thing about going with T-Mobile, for the same level of service and the same number of devices, we will actually save $2,753.40 a year over what we're paying for Verizon right now. So from the fire department's standpoint, it solves our problem of having our devices locked down during major incidents and our cell phones locked down during major incidents. It gives us the ability to get on the network at any time we need to, and it also gives us better service at a cheaper price. If you have any questions, Dylan and I would be more than happy to answer any of your questions.
Director Garcia?
Thank you, Mayor. Did they give you any information regarding the being able to get through on April 8th with the warnings that we may not be able to get all the cell phone calls out because of being jammed with so many users here?
Yes, ma'am. T-Mobile is guaranteeing that it will work. Same thing for Arkansas Derby, same thing for Apple Blossom, same thing during St. Patrick's Day. And Dylan, do you have some information you want to
I
present?
do have one thing to add to that. Thank you. One thing T-Mobile has offered us versus Verizon and other carriers, they actually have SatColts, and that is a cellular, a cell on light truck. So it's basically like a mobile unit they can bring in for the time being, and it's got a cell tower on it, and that can enhance our capabilities and help us get out a lot more on that.
And they have multiple of these available.
That's wonderful news. Thank you.
Director Webb?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. That cell piece that you were just referring to, if we were to take on this resolution and allow the switch of services to T-Mobile, how likely is it that you can have it available prior to the April date?
Great question.
For
Can
a
you-
planned event, we can get those in 48 hours. In an emergency, they've got assets within an 8-hour drive, basically. So
Okay.
So if a tornado came in and say it took down a lot of cell towers, that within 8 hours, they could have a cell tower deployed and get the fire department back up and operational.
And would its range and all those characteristics be included in our packet, or do you know that off the top of your head?
Actually, it is.
Is one
It
good for our?
shows you the level of service in all of Hot Springs and Garland County and the state of Arkansas. And it's really good. It's the premier product that they have, right? It's the 5G, can't remember the exact nomenclature of it, but it's the best product they have that's available inside the city of Hot Springs.
And would that operate like you just have it for that short amount of time span, and then it has to be returned back to T-Mobile, or would it stay with us?
It would stay with us until such time as service was restored.
Okay.
Now, say if it came in
Gotcha.
from the Arkansas Derby, once the Derby was over, they would take it down and take it back to wherever it was based at.
Could you not receive services like that with Verizon?
We could, but
You
the
could?
signal would not be as strong, and we would
Okay.
not have ruthless preemption.
Got you. Okay, thank you.
All of that data is in the packet. It shows the upload and the download speeds associated and the locations. I can tell you this, that out on Albert Pike right now, Verizon's horrible. We get locked down quite a bit, and our signal strength is very, very poor.
For this portable unit, are we looking at having one, let's say on the day of the eclipse, are we looking at having one of those here that would service the entire city of Hot Springs, or are you looking at having more than one?
So what
And
we
do you
will
have
do-
the sites in mind?
If we actually do choose to go with Verizon, I will write them a letter, and I will ask them to provide cell service in the downtown area, the Park Avenue area, and the remainder of the city. Those are really the critical areas that we think the number of people are going to be at. Oaklawn, lower downtown, and upper downtown. And so, we will ask for extra cellular towers during that time period.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Thank you.
Next, we have Resolution R 2429, a resolution setting a time and date for hearing to abandon and close a portion of an unnamed alleyway in Avondale Addition subdivision in Garland County, Arkansas, and our city clerk, Ms. Harmony Morsley, will present.
Thank you. The property owners are Carol Weatherford on behalf of CEK Properties and Dennis Ridley. They have filed a petition to vacate a portion of this unnamed alleyway. At this point, city staff and utility provider representatives are reviewing the proposal. Any issues that any of those parties bring forward would be in your packet for the March 5th meeting. This resolution before you right now simply sets the date for that public hearing so that notice can be placed in the newspaper 2 times before March 5th. Do you have any questions?
Any questions of Harmony? Thank you.
Next, Mayor, members of the board, will be your first item under new business for that evening. Consider Resolution R 2430, a resolution authorizing the purchase of certain vehicles pursuant to ACA 1458-104, 1911-249, and HSC 261. And Greg Spees, our fleet director, will present the item. This is our purchase of vehicles that we bring to you annually. Greg?
Thank you, Mr. Burrow. Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the board. This is our annual purchase of vehicles from the state contract. Arkansas law and the City of Hot Springs ordinance permit the purchase of vehicles through a contract administered by the state. Also, Act 410 of 2009 allows new motor vehicles to be purchased from a licensed automobile dealership in Arkansas for an amount not to exceed the fleet price awarded by the state. At this time, there are 32 vehicles that need to be purchased in this manner. Vehicles are all budgeted in the 2024 budget approved by the Board of Directors in November of '23. Attachment A provides a summary of the vehicles recommended by staff. In addition, detailed information is offered on each purchase with a vehicle ordering form and the listing from the state contract. The total purchase price of all these vehicles is $1,363,469. I would add that a majority, almost half of these vehicles are police vehicles.
Any questions on this matter? Director Garcia?
All of these are already in our 24 budget,
Yes, ma'am.
was my understanding.
Yes.
And any with salvage value will be sold and brought back.
They'll be sold
The
as
money.
surplus, yes.
Thank you.
Director Garcia, this item will be somewhat contingent upon the passage of item 15, which is the financing.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that the general fund, fire, and police will be on short-term financing. That's coming up later in your agenda.
Thank you. Thank you for pointing
Any
that out.
additional questions? Thank you.
Next, we have consider Resolution R 2431, a resolution approving a preliminary plat and 106 lots subdivision development plan on approximately 25.3 acres of land generally located at 900 and 1,000 blocks of Birchwood Bay Road. And again, our Planning and Development Director, Ms. Selman.
Thank you. This is an appeal of Planning Commission action approving a preliminary plat and development plans. We have had 7 appeals of this decision. From Angela Sane, Janice Everett, Smokey Campbell, Doris Ann Wilson, Brenda Miller, Terry and Donna Kent. They have each individually appealed PS 23-173 Cali Ridge preliminary subdivision and R3 zoned 106 lot subdivision generally located south of Lakeshore Drive on 25.34 acres along the east side of the 900 to 1,000 blocks of Birchwood Bay Road. Because of the number of appeals, we have compiled the 7 appeals into broad topic areas, and objections have been categorized into the following list: density, covenants, conditions and restrictions. Meetings seem to be in the cold months. Notice of meeting, graphics, impact mitigation, future development in the area, traffic, drainage, sewer capacity, questions and concerns, and Planning Commission error. Subject to the land's R3 zone district, the act of subdividing is governed by Hot Springs Code, Title 16, Chapter 4 standards. Hot Springs Board of Directors approved Ordinance 6029 on January 5th of 2021, rezoning the subject land to R3, low medium density residential. The R3 zoning establishes permitted and conditional uses, minimum lot sizes, building location through setbacks, front, side, and rear, and off-street parking requirements. Hot Springs Code Section 1641 at SEEK establishes the regulations for the subdivision code. It also provides specifications and regulations for streets, drainage, stormwater management, flood prevention, solid waste collection and disposal, water system, and wastewater system. Before an application reaches Planning Commission, it is reviewed in detail by the city's professional staff who are assigned to Hot Springs Development Review Committee. You may know it as DRC. DRC reviews all plats and development plans in detail for compliance with specifications and regulations. Rather than go into the detail that I could, I am trying to make this somewhat concise. With regard to zoning, 25.34 acres with a gross density of 6 lots per acre as allowed by the R3 zone district potentially supports up to 152 lots. Cali Ridge preliminary subdivision proposes 106 lots. Therefore, it complies with the R3 zone district requirements. Covenants, conditions, and restrictions. If a developer so chooses, the Bill of Assurances, which is a private agreement, may also prescribe design or building materials that may be favored or prohibited. The state of Arkansas at ACA Section 1456-204 preempts a municipality's ability to regulate residential building design elements. Consequently, residential design materials and so forth is not a standard for subdivision review and cannot be. A concern that meetings seem to be held in cold winter months. Planning Commission meets monthly at 6 o'clock on the second Thursday of the month. A person whose complete application meets the minimum requirements for review per Hot Springs Code is placed on an agenda following multiple reviews by Hot Springs Development Review Committee. And that committee includes city, county, state, and other agencies, including first responders. With regard to this application, This application came to us in November, but was not deemed complete until the end of December. That is why it was scheduled in January. The Development Review Committee found that the application at that time would comply with the city's adopted standards, subject to specific conditions of approval. The appeals noted concerns with notice of the meeting. Well, remarkably, Hot Springs Code does not require public notice to subdivisions. Nonetheless, public notice was provided by the posting of a sign publication in the Sentinel Record about the project and the date that it would be heard. Some people indicated that they thought that one of the graphics in the packet was difficult to read. We can always provide assistance in accessing information, including graphics, by calling the department, and we're happy to do so. Impact mitigation. The applicant must provide code-compliant public improvements, and it was a finding of the Development Review Committee that such required improvements as proposed are both compliant and that they reflect the rational nexus and proportionate share standards that come to us through Supreme Court decisions. Future development in the area, future development which has not been submitted or approved, was something that captured some people's imagination. We can only look at projects that have been submitted and approved as the basis for evaluating a preliminary plat. Traffic was a major concern. The traffic study by a professional engineering firm used recognized standards and methodology. Birchwood Bay improvements are proportionate to the traffic increase increment that can foreseeably result from Cali Ridge preliminary plat when developed. Regarding drainage, the site drainage provisions meet the requirements of Hot Springs Code. Sewer capacity was a concern. Because of that concern, the city engineer and utilities director both went over the information that was submitted in the proposal and in the appeals. And after that additional review of data and facilities, both the city engineer and utilities director found that sewer capacity and facilities are adequate. Appellants had numerous concerns and questions reflecting a variety of perspectives and undocumented statements that, while possibly valid, are not standards upon which a decision for preliminary plat approval can rest. And finally, there was allegation that Planning Commission's decision was in error. Much of that seemed to rest on the fact that, or the idea, that if the public notice had been more extensive, that more people would have been in the audience at the Planning Commission meeting. And there was also accusation that some of the engineering work that was submitted was deceptive. Following review by the Development Review Committee, there was no finding that that claim could be supported. The Cali Ridge preliminary plat demonstrates compliance with the R3 zone district and with Hot Springs Code Title 16, Chapter 4 requirements for a complete application, for compliancy with applicable regulations, and the mitigation proposed is adequate to address negative impacts. Development Review Committee determined that Cali Ridge preliminary plat and development plans are in compliance with Hot Springs Code Section 16446 submission requirements, and there are 47 of those, as depicted on the plat and development plans, and that the standards for preliminary plat approval were met. Cali Ridge Preliminary Subdivision Appeal is a quasi-judicial matter being heard de novo by Hot Springs Board of Directors. As such, the appeal is subject to adopted standards of Hot Springs Code. R3 zoning established the maximum number of lots per acre as of the board's adoption of Ordinance 6029 on January 5th, 2021. Hot Springs Code Section 1641 at SEEK establishes and regulates the technical standards for preliminary plat. Cali Ridge preliminary plat demonstrates compliance with Hot Springs Code, subject to Planning Commission's 9 conditions, and based upon that, there is no evidence that Planning Commission's decision was in error. In closing, we need to consider the fundamental issues under consideration. There are 2. What is the standard of review? And does the proposed subdivision comply with the requirements of Hot Springs Code? We have Hot Springs Code 16243, general regulations in the R3 zoning district as to use, lot size, building location, off-street parking. We have Hot Springs Code 1641 at SEEK, the regulations for subdivision in Hot Springs, which includes specifications and regulations for streets, drainage, stormwater management, flood prevention, solid waste collection and disposal, the water system, and the wastewater system. When deciding if the various code provisions have been met, the board is not making new law, which would be legislative, as in the decision to rezone R3 in 2021, but is rather executing existing law, Hot Springs Code, to the application, making the determination a quasi-judicial decision. This distinction is important as the standard of review for each is different. Should a court be asked to review a legislative decision of the board, the standard is whether there is any rational basis for the legislative act. But that's not what we're doing. On the other hand, a quasi-judicial decision is heard de novo by the court. The issue before the board is quasi-judicial, and therefore the sole determination is whether the submittal complies with the code, Hot Springs Code 16243 and Hot Springs Code Section 16401 at SEEK. That would be the R3 zone district and the subdivision regulations. And thank you for staying with me through that.
Director Garcia?
Yes, that was very well presented. Thank you. But I wanted to ask, in our packets, will we have everything that was presented to the Planning Commission for the time they made their, all of that will be included in their multiple conditions that they placed?
Yes,
on
yes. We have everything. There's just about 200 pages even.
And on what you mentioned of those appeals, will there be, will we have any department heads or engineers or department head from Stormwater here to be able to answer questions, or are you able to answer those questions?
Yes, Deputy City Manager Denny McFate will be here. City Engineer Gary Carnahan has signed on to attend, and I'm sure in the next week, if we can identify someone else that we believe would be helpful to you, they will be here as well.
We'll have public safety here as well, that if there's any public safety questions, they'll be able to address that.
And the traffic study, the date of that traffic study will be included?
Yes.
Thank you
Yes.
very much.
Director Webb?
Thank you, Mayor. I think a lot of the questions I had, Director Garcia was bringing up, so it is important too to make sure that what is presented to us in this packet does cover what measurements and standards and provisions were provided as a, I guess, rubric, if you will, for this development by the Planning Commission. So I would definitely want to see that. And then you were mentioning several codes that are a part of the guidance for this development. One was code 16-4-1, another was code 16-2-43. Would those be in our packet too?
We can certainly make them available.
16-4-1 is an entire chapter. We can put a link.
It's all online.
Yeah.
It's all online. We can put a link.
Any part of 16-4-1 that is more prevalent than the other part as it relates to this development?
I think it kind of exists
The whole scope?
as a whole.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you had mentioned that there were 7 appeals. Would those appeals be shared with the board too? As they
Absolutely.
were submitted?
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Any additional questions?
I have one. Mayor.
Director Trustee?
Thank you, Mayor. This is to our city attorney. Ryan, there are 7 appeals have been filed. Are we going to go through this 7 times? Have they been, or can they be combined into one hearing? I know that's what she summarized for us, was the issues that were raised, but will we only consider this one time?
Excellent question. There were 7, 2 by one individual.
Yes.
So 6 individuals, 7 appeals. Those narratives have been verbatimly reproduced, and her responses are to the allegations of the appeal within the narrative. They are grouped into general categories simply because we would be here until midnight if not.
Right.
So they will be heard in a composite format, but all will be included in your packet, all 7.
Okay, thank you.
Webb?
Thank you, Mayor. As far as the meeting night goes, to speak on this agenda item, what does that look like? Would it be essentially as any other agenda item? They sign up there at the front?
Yes, sir.
In the books?
It's one item.
It's one item?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any of the 7 appeals are referring to this one item?
One item.
Okay.
Yes, sir. The item that is before you is the application for the subdivision. Comes to you in the affirmative, once again, like we've talked before. A yes vote would approve the submission.
Yes vote would approve the...
Approve the submission of the subdivision.
Okay. And not the appeal itself? So yes vote is just to appeal the approval of the subdivision, no vote is to deny
That
the
is correct.
subdivision?
Yes.
Okay.
They always come to you in the affirmative.
Got you.
You never vote to support or not support an appeal. You're voting yes or no on the original submission. The appeal is merely what got it to you.
Okay.
Had there not been an appeal, you would not be hearing this.
be seeing it.
That's why it's quasi judicial.
Thank you.
Any further questions on this item? Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, consider Resolution R-2432, a resolution amending Title II of the Hot Springs Code of Ordinances and for other purposes, and our city attorney, Brian Albright, will discuss.
Thank you, Bill, Mayor, members of the board. This is the topic that we've dealt with in a couple of work sessions. In fact, we're going to have another work session at the conclusion of this agenda meeting to see if there are any additional changes that need to be made before this is brought to you as an action item at your regularly called business meeting next week.
Very good. Well, any questions? We'll have those during the work session.
Yes, sir.
Next item is consider your first ordinance of the evening. It's ordinance O-2409, an ordinance amending Hot Springs Code of Ordinances, Title 15, Chapter 8, Article 2 of the Flood Damage Prevention Code and for other purposes. And again, our Public Works Director, Ron Seavright, will present the item. Ron?
Good afternoon. A lot of these amendments were brought to us by our 5-year CRS audit by our auditor. This is to ensure that the city maintains its NFIP rating for flood insurance for our residents of the city of Hot Springs. Most of these, in summary, are due to the freeboard clause. And in the freeboard clause, for every 2 feet above the BFE, base flood elevation, we added mechanical equipment. So any mechanical equipment also has to meet that standard. And mechanical equipment considers like air conditioning units, electrical panels, things of that nature. It's also modified in definitions. And then in some summary, we did some map amendments that were paid by the city of Hot Springs that we also get additional points for. So those were added to this code. And all the changes will be highlighted in red for you in the packet, and you'll be able to read them over.
That's good, thank you.
Any questions on this? Thank you.
Next, we have considered ordinance O-2410, an ordinance amending the Hot Springs Fire Prevention and Building Code as applied to certain structures, declaring an emergency and for other purposes, and our Fire Chief Ed Davis will present.
Good afternoon again, directors. So I come before you today to ask for you to consider making 2 modifications to the 2 different fire districts that we have in the city of Hot Springs. Fire districts are areas within the city of Hot Springs that are designed to reduce the spread of fire should it occur. We have 2 of them. One is the original fire district, and it covers primarily the commercial areas along Central Avenue, Malvern Avenue, Airport Road, Higdon Ferry, Albert Pike, and those environs around there. And the second fire district was one that came about in 2013. It was designed to protect the historic districts in Hot Springs, primarily Park Avenue, Woodington Avenue, Pleasant, downtown Hot Springs, all of those areas that are architecturally and historically significant to the town. So the first change that we want to make is actually into the Legacy Fire District, and that fire district is designed, as I said, to protect the commercial areas of Hot Springs. Now, what we have in some of those areas of the fire district is Type 5 wood frame structures that were originally single-family dwellings. They were built in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, that kind of thing. And they are, in by nature, surrounded by commercial entities. In the case of one of the structures we're talking about, there's a convenience store near it, a funeral home near it, a veterinary clinic and things like that around it. So it is by nature located in a commercial area, but it is until recently a single-family dwelling. One of the things that happens whenever you have one of these small single-family dwellings is that you still have to abide by all the fire district rules, meaning that if you do have a wood frame dwelling, that wood frame dwelling would have to have a fire sprinkler system installed. And so for a small occupancy, say one that would be less than 2,000 square foot, that's actually kind of an onerous requirement. It's very, very expensive to install a sprinkler system in such a small occupancy. And so one of the things that we're proposing is if there is 15 feet of open space around the structure, in other words, 15 foot of clearance from other structures or from property line, we would allow wood frame structures less than 2,000 square foot in size to be changed in occupancy classification without having to put a fire sprinkler system in. Now, this does not change the nature of the fire district or what we're trying to achieve. We would not allow structures with multiple structures, say on a lot, that are wood frame to actually all convert over to be used. That would certainly defeat what we want to have with a fire district. But these small, what I would refer to as postage stamp size lots and postage stamp size buildings, I think that it's something that we should do to encourage continued development in these areas. The second change that I would like to propose to you to do is within the Thermal Basin Fire District in the traditionally residential areas that we would allow wood frame houses, homes, single-family dwellings, to be built or to be rebuilt. When we put the Thermal Basin Fire District online and made it law in 2013, it was never our intention to preclude wood frame structures from traditionally single-family neighborhoods like Quapaw, Prospect, Whittington, Park Avenue, some of those areas. But as the law is written right now, it actually does legally preclude that. That was not our intention, and we have never enforced that part of the Thermal Basin Fire District. The Thermal Basin Fire District was there to preserve those historic structures. It will continue to do that, primarily the commercial ones. But we do feel like that we want to see infill inside the city limits in those areas, and the way that is normally done in single-family dwellings is through wood frame structures. And, you know, one of the things we don't want to do is we don't want to change the nature of Quapaw, Prospect, those areas. If someone wanted to build a large single-family dwelling, as long as they met the requirements of Volume 3 of the Fire Code, the residential code, they could do that. I think that's sufficient, and I'm recommending that the Board of Directors consider making these changes.
Any questions of Chief Davis? Thank you.
Next, your final item of the evening is consider ordinance O-2411, an ordinance authorizing an agreement with Cogent Leasing and Financing Incorporated to provide short-term financing under Amendment Number 78 to the Arkansas Constitution and for certain 2024 capital acquisitions, declaring an emergency and for other purposes. Again, our Finance Director, Ms. Scott, will present.
Thank you. The city seeks to obtain financing for capital items approved in the 2024 budget. $845,133 in vehicles, $875,000 for a pumper truck, $187,900 for specialized equipment, $1,045,000 for heavy equipment, and $80,000 for playground equipment. During the 2024 budget process, these items were identified as being financed by borrowing funds rather than using current operating funds. A request for financing proposal was issued in January, and responses were received by 3 responsive bidders. The bids were evaluated, and Bank Funding LLC, on behalf of its assignee or designee, has provided the most favorable bid at 37 basis points above the 5-year Treasury at the time of the loan. The 5-year Treasury was 4.01% on January 29th, 2024, so the rate would be 4.38%. For purposes of comparison, the rates on 2022 and 2023 financing were 1.824% and 4.31% respectively. The higher rate reflects the market changes since 2022. We have been notified by Bank Funding LLC that they will be assigning the loan to Cogent Leasing and Financing, Inc., and that they are offering to lock in the rate at 4.38%. It would be in the city's best interest to declare an emergency so that funding could take place immediately in order to take advantage of the lender's offer to lock in the rate at 4.38%. And for budget purposes, I used a rate of 7.5%, so this is certainly favorable to the budget. Staff recommends approval of the selection of Cogent Leasing and Financing, Inc. to provide financing for approved 2024 capital items in an amount not to exceed $3,033,033. The term of the loan would be 5 years, and this recommendation is pursuant to the State of Arkansas Amendment 78, authorizing cities to obtain short-term financing.
Very good. Questions, Director Garcia?
Thank you, Mayor. Will our packet include all of the bidders' information?
There is a bid tab sheet that has the 3 listed, yes.
Thank you.
Director Trustee?
Thank you. Karen, I think that's great news. Will this include those items that we just moved from 23's budget into 24? Will they, because there
are a few things.
A few things,
Yes.
few of the vehicles, for
Yes.
example? Okay, I just wanted to be sure. Thank you.
Mayor, that was your final item of the evening. I do want to point out that typically February 20th would be the State of the City report presented to the board. In light of the number of items that we have on that meeting, we'll be moving that and plan on doing the State of City on March the 5th. So we'll do that report at that time. Mayor, that
All right,
concludes it.
that concludes. We do have a short work session afterwards, and so we'll give 5-10 minutes to have a break. Thank you all, and thank you, leadership class number 36, for hanging in there with us today.